A new episode of Primal is on the way, and this time it brings a new perspective, a more self-aware version of Spear, and a constant shift in how we might understand his return, not just physically, but mentally as well. The first teaser shows that Spear has finally reached a more stable level of awareness. It's not just about controlling his impulses and fighting instincts anymore, but also the deeper, more complex emotional ones. As we saw in the previous episode, he was able to recognize his daughter, and because of that, he chose to leave the village and remain in the Colosseum in order to earn the reward, that mysterious black liquid. The more he consumes it, the closer he seems to getting back to who he used to be. This element introduces a clear motivation for the character. The Colosseum is no longer just a place for combat. It becomes the means through which Spear tries to reclaim his identity. Every fight is not only a physical challenge, but also another step toward rebuilding his consciousness. In that sense, the teaser suggests the story will continue exploring the relationship between the violence of his environment and the mental transformation he's going through. As he returns to the arena, we see him holding his daughter in what appears to be some kind of illusion, happy just to have her in his arms. But the moment shatters when the baby starts hitting him, and he suddenly realizes he's actually fighting the green beast we briefly saw in the earliest promotional footage before the series premiered. These visions constantly overlap with reality, leaving him deeply confused, because he can't bring himself to fight if there's even a chance he might hurt his daughter. Visually, this works as a narrative device that reflects Spear's fractured mental state. He can't fully separate what's happening in the fight from what his mind is projecting. His daughter's image overlaps with that of his opponent, interrupting his natural instinct to attack. As a result, the fight stops being a simple physical confrontation and turns into a moment of intense psychological tension. This moment could represent a breaking point between the zombie-like version of Spear and the one we've always known. If he gives in to his instincts, he would end up harming the green beast, but in his mind, that also means hurting his daughter. The vision isn't just something happening internally either. It's something he begins projecting onto reality. At one point, he even sees his daughter grabbing the creature's weapon, which makes him try to dodge and retreat from every strike. During this confrontation, the conflict between violence and fatherhood becomes very clear. On one hand, the Colosseum demands brutality and survival at all costs. On the other, the visions of his daughter create an internal resistance that holds him back. This contrast suggests that Spear is going through a transformation where his actions are no longer driven purely by instinct, but also by a consciousness that's slowly beginning to reorganize itself. Despite the confusion these visions cause, the teaser suggests that he ultimately prevails. Based on the earlier previews, we know he defeats the green opponent, killing him, and most likely claiming more of that black liquid. That outcome reinforces the idea that the Colosseum will continue serving as the main path toward his recovery. Because of this, it's very likely that Spear will keep returning to these battles, gathering more of the substance and gradually recovering his memories. The process seems designed to unfold step by step, with every fight representing another stage in the slow restoration of his mind. This brings us to the second teaser, where we see another opponent, this time a red-skinned fighter. In this case, the fight appears to be much shorter, since the opponent is taken down with a single blow. The scene suggests that the effects of the liquid are already becoming far more visible in Spear's physical abilities. It shows that the substance doesn't just make him more aware, it also boosts his strength to a level we haven't really seen since the episode Rage of the Ape Men. In that chapter, a similar idea is introduced, a mysterious liquid capable of granting superhuman strength to whoever consumes it. However, there's an important difference between the two situations. In that earlier episode, the liquid's effect was tied to a much more savage and unstable behavior. Here, the opposite seems to be happening. The liquid clearly gives Spear a massive increase in strength, but without pushing him into a complete loss of control. His behavior feels more focused and less impulsive, reinforcing the idea that his mind is gradually regaining balance. This detail could indicate that the story is building toward a new stage for the character. Spear wouldn't just be recovering his memories, he might also be developing a more self-aware version of himself, one capable of combining his raw physical power with a clearer and more stable state of mind. Taken together, the teasers point toward an interesting direction for the character's return. The conflict between the visions of his daughter, the need to survive inside the Colosseum, and the effects of the black liquid suggests that Spear's recovery won't happen overnight. Instead, it seems to be unfolding as a gradual transformation, where every fight, every vision, and every decision helps piece his mind back together. Because of that, this substance could actually become a major advantage, possibly even the key to Spear coming back to life in a way, without needing a truly living body. It introduces a very different narrative approach, since many theories previously assumed that Spear would eventually return to his original body through the green magic or some kind of ritual. There was even the possibility that the story might end by breaking the curse that keeps him in this state, which would effectively mark the end of his existence. But the teasers seem to hint at something else entirely. Instead of restoring his original form or removing him from the story, the series may choose a middle path, keeping Spear in this altered physical state, but with his consciousness fully restored. In that scenario, we could see new adventures featuring a zombie version of Spear who is completely aware, able to think, remember, and make clear decisions. That would represent a fascinating evolution for the character. He would keep his new physical condition, but regain the mental qualities that defined him from the very beginning of the series. From that perspective, the black liquid becomes far more important within the story. It wouldn't simply be a temporary boost of strength or stability, but rather a key element that slowly rebuilds the character's mind. Every fight in the Colosseum then becomes a kind of exchange. Spear takes part in these brutal battles, and in return he earns the liquid that brings him one step closer to reclaiming who he once was. In addition, once we learn the title of the upcoming episode, Hollow Crown, another possible interpretation about where the story might be heading begins to emerge. The title itself could suggest that the authority or power structure within the Colosseum is starting to weaken. The idea of a hollow crown is often associated with power that has lost its legitimacy, or authority that no longer has the strength to sustain itself. If that's the case, it could mean that the system controlling the Colosseum is heading towards some kind of crisis or transformation. If Spear continues to grow stronger while also regaining his awareness, his presence in that environment could begin to disrupt the existing balance. It wouldn't be surprising if he eventually becomes a force that changes the rules of that place, or even triggers the collapse of the system itself. On the other hand, the title might also be interpreted in a more symbolic way. The Hollow Crown could point to the absence of a true leader, or to a form of power that has lost its meaning. Under that perspective, the Colosseum could represent a structure that appears powerful on the surface, but is actually supported by a fragile authority. If this interpretation is correct, the story may be preparing a major shift in the environment where the current arc is unfolding. Spear wouldn't just be recovering his mind, he could also become the catalyst that destabilizes the order governing that world. There's also another possible reading of the title. The Hollow Crown might reflect Spear's own condition. For much of this arc, he has existed almost like a body without a fully functioning mind, as if his identity itself had been emptied out. From that perspective, the gradual return of his consciousness could symbolize the moment when that crown finally begins to fill again. In that sense, the teasers suggest that Spear's return isn't just about regaining his strength or recovering physically. The process seems to involve the full reconstruction of the character, his memories, his identity, and the role he will ultimately choose once his awareness is fully restored. And only after he regains all of his memories might we see him return to his village, reunited with his daughter and with Mira. But that's where another problem could appear: Fang. Throughout the entire season, we've seen that the dinosaur never truly accepted the return of her best friend. Because of that, a confrontation between them seems almost inevitable, or even a fracture in their bond. But we'll find out soon enough. All of this will unfold on Sunday, when the penultimate episode of this incredible season finally arrives.